Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Women's Life Stories, we retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. The grocery bags cut red lines into my fingers by the time I reached the porch. Heat lay over the street like a wet blanket, cicadas drilling past the Spanish moss that hung from the oaks. The house smelled faintly of laundry soap and cedar. When I pushed the door open, my breath caught. A line of my clothes lay scattered up the stairs. Blouses, Sunday dresses, that blue cardigan Tom loved, all kicked aside as if a storm had blown through only this one banister. I climbed each step, complaining in the humid air. In the master sunlight poured across the floorboards and turned dust into glitter. Sloane stood in front of my open closet hanger, hooked to one hip, her lips glossed the color of watermelon. She was easing a silk dress into the space where Tom's suits used to hang. She glanced over her shoulder and smiled as if we were sharing a joke. "Just making space for our things, she said. "The light in here is so much better, perfect for photos." The bag shifted in my arms. A can of peaches thumped the hardwood. My keys slipped and rang against the doorframe. I heard my voice before I felt it. "Then I will make space too, in this house without you." Her smile chilled and fell. The room went quiet except for the fan ticking in the corner. The dress in her hands swayed a little and then went still. I set the bags down by the dresser and carried the tomatoes into the kitchen. My pantry door breathed when it opened, a soft wooden sigh. Tom had built it with his hands 30 years ago when our nights were long and our money thin. His initials were scratched on the inside frame, T+M 91. My fingertips found the groove without looking. Back when Evan brought Sloane by the first time in her white blazer and red nails, she had walked through this kitchen as if she were cataloging it. "So cozy," she kept saying the word light and sharp at the same time. I stirred shrimp and grits and watched her angle her face toward the window. Evan tried not to look nervous. That was his tell since he was small, a smile that seemed tied too tight. He proposed on a rooftop bar that spring. They wanted the ballroom at the old hotel by the River Peonies in late winter, a dress that had to come from a boutique in Buckhead. Evan stood in my kitchen with his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee and asked if I could help. $18,000. I signed the check with Tom's picture watching from the shelf. After they came back from Nassau with sunburnt noses and stories about swings over the water, the apartment they wanted fell through. Rents were rising faster than gossip. Evan said 6 months, maybe a year. He slid his arm around his wife's thin waist and smiled that too-tight smile. I looked at my porch, the wide boards, and the old swing the light we left on, until Evan came home when he was a teenager. I said yes. Sloane moved in with boxes that smelled like a department store and a little spray bottle marked room mist. By the second week, the mugs were not where the mugs had been for 20 years. The plates lived in a lower cabinet because it was more ergonomic. The cast iron Dutch oven went into a place I had to stand on a stool to reach. "I rearranged the flow," she said, popping a strawberry into her mouth. "We will all cook easier this way." Evan kissed her temple and said, "Looks great, babe." The drapes in the living room were navy velvet, heavy and soft. Tom chose the color because he said it reminded him of a night on Tybee when the water had been black and friendly. One Sunday afternoon, I came back from church and found pale linen panels hanging there instead, bright like a doctor's office. "So much fresher," Sloane said. "The others made it dark." The velvet lay folded on the dining table with a thin layer of dust. My hands shook when I lifted them. The frames on the mantel looked at me with familiar eyes. Evan at 5 on Tom's shoulders, his gap tooth and sunburned nose. The wedding photo where I could barely meet the camera because I missed Tom too hard. One evening, a box appeared with family room declutter written on the side in Sloane's handwriting. The frames had been tucked in there with bubble wrap. "Too many makes it busy in here," she said, tapping the shelf as if she were knocking on a door. "I am not good at loud." Tom used to say that, smiling. "May is not loud." I tucked things back slowly. I cooked. I made sweet tea with too much sugar like Tom liked. I left the porch light on at dusk. Then the girls came. 3 women with soft leather handbags and shoes that clicked too hard on old wood. They sat in my living room and let the white wine sweat rings into the table. Cheese I had bought for the week softened on a plate. "This house is a dream," one of them said to Sloane, looking around as if it were a listing online. "I love how you decorated it." "Thank you," Sloane said. "We are still making it ours." I stood in the doorway and pressed my tongue to the roof of my mouth. My name surfaced at the end like an afterthought. "This is Evan's mom," Sloane added. "She lives with us." I took the lasagna out of the oven and carried it back upstairs. The noise rose and fell and rose again. Through the walls, I heard laughter that did not belong to the house. A week later, I reached for my jewelry box because I wanted to wear the sapphire brooch Tom had given me on our 25th anniversary. The little velvet box was warm with memory. It was also empty. I found Sloane at the dining table with cotton balls and a fan of nail polish bottles. "Did you move my brooch?" I asked. My voice was steady, but my palm had gone damp. "Which brooch?" she said without looking up. "The sapphire, the one Tom gave me, the one in the blue box." "Oh, my cousin had a gala. I let her borrow it. She will bring it back next week." "You did not ask me." She looked up then and put the brush down slowly. "You never wear it," she said. "It was sitting there collecting dust. This way it gets some life. It is not a prop, Ishapa." I said. The front door opened. Evan came in with his messenger bag and kissed Sloane on the head. He took in our faces like walking into a room and finding smoke. "What is going on?" he asked. "Your mom is upset because I let my cousin wear a brooch that she never wears," Sloane said. Her voice went soft at the edges. "I wanted to share something pretty." "It was a gift from your father, I said. The words felt brittle in my mouth. Evan ran a hand over his jaw. "Mom, she will bring it back," he said. "It is not a big deal." "It is to me," I said. He looked at Sloane and then at me. Something passed between them that did not touch me at all. "We will talk later," he said. Later came and went. The brooch did not. That night, I lay in bed and watched the light under their door along the floorboards. The walls in an old craftsman are thin. Words travel whether you invite them or not. They started hosting people often. Colleagues of Sloane, a man with a loud laugh and a watch that caught the lamplight. They ordered sushi. They set the head chair with a place setting, and no one looked at the empty space that meant Tom. I went down at 9 to get a glass of water, and someone I did not know smiled kindly at me and said it was sweet that Evan took such good care of his mom. I took the glass back to my room and set it on the nightstand where Tom's watch used to live. There was a ring in the wood from the time he knocked his sweet tea over in his sleep. Evan was tired more. He rubbed his forehead and missed calls. He learned how to agree faster. Sloane learned the house, where the good towels were, where I put the holiday tablecloths. One evening, I looked at the hook beside the door and saw that the spare key ring was lighter. I had kept 2 extra sets there since Tom died. One set was gone. I checked my purse twice and all the drawers I could think of. I did not ask. On a hot Thursday, Sloane moved through the master with a tape measure and her phone. She lifted the shade and turned her face to the window. "The light in here is a dream at 11, she said to the camera. The red nail traced a square in the air. "We can fit a crib right there." "Why would you need a crib?" I asked. It came out flat. She lowered the shade and smiled as if we were talking about the weather. "Just thinking out loud," she said. That night, the air did not move. The ceiling fan made a sound like a moth trapped in a jar. I rolled to the wall and rested my cheek against paint I had picked out with Tom, faded eggshell. Beyond it, their voices rose and fell. Sloane was not soft now. She was careful. "Robert says it is straightforward if we get the right doctors," she whispered. Evan's voice was a low thread. "I do not know." "You said you were tired, Evan. You said you want this to be our home. We cannot do that if she keeps controlling everything. Power of attorney makes it cleaner. We can make decisions. We can get things done." "It is my mother," he said. The words were tight. "And I am your wife," she said. Each word separated. "Who comes first? Robert can line it up. 2 evaluations, 1 form. He told me it happens all the time." Silence settled so I could hear the ice machine kick on downstairs. Then Evan spoke. "I will think of something." The porch light made a small electrical noise and flickered. A breath of air pushed through the trees and the bulb went out. The house fell into a darker kind of dark. I stayed still with my hand flat to the wall and listened to them breathe. Morning came heavy and wet. The bulb on the porch stayed dark. I stood at the sink and watched the neighborhood shift awake. Mrs. Lang watered her begonias with a plastic jug and tried not to look at my house. She looked anyway. By 10 men in work boots were in my kitchen with tape measures clipped to their belts. A clipboard scraped the counter. One of them knocked on the pantry, knuckles echoing in the hollow. Sloane floated behind them in a soft set of pale clothes, in the kind of smile people save for negotiations. White shaker, stone tops, pop the wall and make a bar, the pantry goes. It eats square footage, she said. The foreman nodded. He pointed at the ceiling. We can run new lights to brighten the space. She likes bright. I put my hand on the pantry frame and felt the small cuts where Tom had sanded too hard. The pantry stays, I said. Sloan looked at me and then looked at the foreman. We will review, no decisions today. They left footprints on the tile. When the door shut, I opened the pantry and breathed in flour and cinnamon and old wood. My fingertips found T+M91. I closed the door gently. Then I went to the study. The safe sat in the corner like a sleeping dog. The code was the date on an old napkin in Tom's wallet, the one from a diner 2 days after we got the keys. The dial clicked under my fingers, then released. I took out folders I had not touched since the funeral. The deed. The will Tom signed that gave everything to me. A small envelope with the watch repair ticket that I never used. There was also a file I did not recognize. Coastal First Bank. I slid the papers free and the kitchen seemed to tilt. A home equity line. $45,000. Collateral listed as my address. Signature line labeled owner. My name in my own letters that did not come from my hand. The scan showed a pen stroke that slid where I always lifted. A copy of my license sat behind it. The stamp on the application was recent. I sat in Tom's chair and pressed my palm to the center of the desk to stop it from moving. Out the window, the oaks lifted in the heat with slow dignity. My heart tried to outrun itself. I placed the papers back into the folder and then took them out again because the air felt wrong with them hidden. The floor under my feet was not solid anymore. It held, but it did not feel like mine. I called June. She arrived with iced coffee and that look she wore into court even though she did not go to court anymore. She read the loan packet slowly. Then she pulled out her readers and read it again. This is not your signature, she said. Who has copies of your ID right now? Doctors, church. Evan took a photo of it once for a lease that fell through. I did not think about it. June tapped a nail on the page. We will need samples. Bring me every place your signature lives. Checks, old cards, tax returns. We will also need their paper trail, phone, tablet, anything with cloud backups. I brought her an old iPad that lived in the hall drawer with loose screws and orphan keys. Evan had used it for games and email. June charged it and then looked at me. Do you want me to look? Yes. She opened messages. Blue and gray bubbles rose like fish. She scrolled until a date that felt like a wound. I watched her face shift the way a tide reveals rocks under it. Sloan to Evan. Robert says power of attorney is straightforward. Make her feel safe. Use her love. Get her to put it on paper. If not, we can push a competency eval with 2 doctors. Evan to Sloan, I do not know if I can. Sloan, you can. I will handle it. You just sign where I tell you. The room went quiet. The fridge hummed in a small, stubborn way. June held the tablet a little farther from her face, like distance could dilute it. We are not going to panic, yeah, she said. We are going to build a wall of paper. Then we will decide where to push. Harold Benton's office was 2 floors up in a brick building that smelled faintly of copier toner and lemon cleaner. Diplomas lined the wall in straight rows. He listened without interrupting. He wrote numbers and proper names on a yellow pad. He asked me if Tom had ever refinanced. He asked me if anyone else lived in the house officially. He asked me if I had any health evaluations on file in the past 12 months. When I finished, he moved the yellow pad aside. Forgery and fraud, he said. The bank will listen. They like to avoid publicity tied to elder cases. We should contact the fraud unit, a handwriting expert, and a notary for anything new. We put protections in place today. Can you live with a trust controlling the house while you remain trustee? Yes. He nodded once. We also move your savings, new account, new bank, no shared access. Change the will to conditions, clean lines. If you want a softer path for Evan, we can negotiate on the civil side. The criminal side we keep as leverage. June looked at me. Her brow was set. We move now, she said. We spent the afternoon drawing signatures into boxes while Mr. Chen witnessed and stamped. The trust papers were simple, the will less so. Harold chose words that felt like stones laid across a river. Solid, cold, necessary. Sloan would inherit nothing from me through Evan unless he met the conditions that Harold read in a voice that did not tremble. At Coastal First, a woman in a navy suit named Nina Patel took notes like a metronome. She read the loan packet with a careful expression, then asked for my ID. She compared it to the scan in the file and bit the inside of her cheek. Her desk had a photo of 2 boys on a beach. Their hair was wet, and they were laughing at something I could not see. "We have procedures," she said. "You will file an affidavit. We will initiate an internal review. If the handwriting expert supports your claim, we will rescind the line and refer the matter. It can move quickly if your evidence is clean." "It is clean," June said. "It is mine, sign," I said. Nina slid a card across the desk. "Call me if anyone from our collections team reaches out. I will mark the account. Do not engage on the phone. We will talk in person." On the way home, June turned the fan up and let the pickup cool our faces. We did not play the radio. The silence between us had shape to it. At the house, the light on the porch was still out. The spare key hook by the door was still missing 1 ring. I wrote that down on a piece of paper and put it in the drawer the way Tom used to store facts he did not want to forget. I cooked something simple. The smell of onions and butter brought the kitchen back to itself 1 breath at a time. Evan came home late and set his bag on the counter. He watched me stir the pot. He looked at the pantry and then at me. The shape of him in the doorway was still the shape of my boy. He had Tom's shoulders. He did not have Tom's steadiness. "We had people in today," he said, as if I did not know. "I met them." I turned the spoon in a slow circle. "Do you think we can talk about this like adults?" he said. His voice lifted on the last word, as if it had a question tied to it. "We can," I said. "The answer is no." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "This house needs work. We live here too." "You live here now?" I said. "That is not the same." Sloane arrived without looking in the kitchen. She went straight to the master. I heard her moving hangers, the little sing-song she used when she wanted the room to agree with her. Evan stared at his shoes. "I never wanted a fight," he said. "You started one," I said. I kept my voice low. I did not raise my voice in this house. Not when Tom got his diagnosis. Not when the car died on a highway shoulder in Florida. Not now. We ate at the table in a silence that cracked when forks touched plates. Sloane did not join us. She posted something from the master because Mrs. Lang texted me a screenshot of a story that said our light at 11 is unreal. A red nail traced a square on the screen. The caption had hearts. I washed the dishes and set them to dry. The faucet leaked a slow beat. A fruit fly traced a useless circle over the sink. June called and asked if I wanted her to come by. I said no. I stayed in the kitchen and waited for the house to exhale. When Sloane came down, she had a glass of orange juice and a kind of sparkle that made her cheeks shine. "We put a hold on the contractors, Wisita," she said. "For now. There is no reason to be stubborn. If you do not want the pantry gone, we can revisit. It is a team." I looked at the glass in her hand. Pulp clung to the rim. "Return my brooch," I said. She did not flinch. "Next week, I told you that." "Return my key," I said. Her eyes moved to the hook and back. "I do not know what you mean." Evan looked at the floorboards. I dried my hands and set the towel over the sink. I could feel Tom at my shoulder. He was not a ghost. He was the way my hand found the shelf in the dark without missing it. I stepped into the doorway so they both had to see me. "You will both listen," I said. 7 days. You will sign a renunciation of any claim to this house. You will agree to repay what you took from the bank in monthly amounts. You will pack and leave. If you do not, I will file a report with the bank and the police. I will bring them our papers. I will bring them your messages. I will bring them my hand and your fake of it and lay them side by side for a stranger to judge." Evan took a breath that hurt to hear. "Mom." Sloane smiled with only one half of her mouth. "You would not," she said. "I would," I said. The porch was dark when I said it. The air pressed against the screens. Somewhere 2 streets over, a dog barked and then gave up. I reached for the switch by the door. My finger hovered there and did not move. The key hook hung quiet and light and 1 ring short. The rain came in a gray sheet, soft and steady, the kind that lays down on Savannah and does not lift. June drove while the wipers beat a slow rhythm. I watched the oaks drip and the sidewalk shine. My hands would not stop worrying the edge of Harold Benton's business card until June took it and slid it into her visor. Harold's office felt colder than yesterday. The lemon cleaner lingered. A stack of folders sat in neat rows. Mr. Chen laid out 3 sets of papers with a square of blotter at each chair. A tray held 2 pens that wrote True Blue, and a stamp that waited like a small animal. Nina Patel stood at the window with her arms crossed. She turned when we came in and nodded once. "We will keep this concise," Harold said. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Evan and Sloan arrived 5 minutes late. Their umbrellas dripped on the mat. Sloan wore a black dress that looked like it had never seen a wrinkle. She hung her sunglasses from the neckline and took her seat with her phone face down beside her hand. Evan looked smaller than he had ever looked in this room. He sat next to her and unclenched his jaw with effort. Harold slid the first packet toward them. Loan documents tied to a home equity line at Coastal First. Owner signature does not match verified samples. Affidavit attesting to non-consent is prepared. Bank representative is present. Handwriting expert is retained. Messages recovered from an iPad will be part of any record. We are here to avoid a criminal process. There is a civil resolution on the table. Sloan glanced at the paper and then at Nina. "Why is the bank here?" she asked. "So I can witness the terms," Nina said. "So I can rescind the line if we have agreement. So our collections team does not call your phones while you eat dinner." Mr. Chen uncapped a pen and tested it on the blotter patient as rain. Harold tapped the second packet. "Terms here, sales. Reports," he said. 1. A renunciation filed and notarized that states you have no claim on 3112 Whitaker Avenue now or in the future. 2. A commitment to repay the bank the exact principal taken $500 due each month for 60 months paid to the trust account listed in the agreement. 3. Vacate the property within 7 days. Sloan laughed once and to man's house. Right. It takes time if you take 6 years. If sad fast stars Bush King. "I am not," Harold said. She turned her laugh into a smile aimed at me. "May be reasonable. We share this home. We have improved it. We bring life to it. You cannot just push us into the rain like strays." I looked at her hands. The nail polish was pale and neat. "You did not ask before you took," I said. "You do not ask now." Evan cleared his throat. "Mom," he said. He tried to find the place where his mouth would settle. "I made a mistake. I can fix it." "Fixing it looks like signing," June said. Nina opened her folder. "For clarity, if you do not sign, the bank will move. My department will advocate for rescission due to fraud. The matter will be referred. That is standard." Sloan kept her eyes on me. "We have options too, she said. "We can talk to a lawyer who understands family. We can ensure you are taken care of, even if you find it hard to manage things now. These terms are an insult." Harold slid a printout across the table. "This is the message where you outlined a competency road. This is the part where you wrote, 'Make her feel safe, use her love.'" Sloan's jaw sharpened. The blood left Evan's face so fast I thought he might faint. He steadied his hands on his knees and swallowed something that must have tasted like metal. "Bring me a pen," Sloan said. "We will sign if she gives us $20,000 as a down payment. Call it a relocation fee. You have savings, May. You do not need all of it." "No," I said. She blinked. "You are not even going to pretend to negotiate." "No," I said again. The words landed and stayed. Evan turned to me. "Would you send me to jail?" he asked. His voice sounded like the first time he said mother instead of mom in 2nd grade, trying to see how it felt in his mouth. "If you force my hand," I said. "Yeah." He pressed his lips together until the color went out of them. He looked at his lap. He looked at the window. He looked at his wife. She did not look back. She stared at me the way someone stares at a locked door. Harold placed the signature page on top. Mr. Chen set the notary block beside it. Nina folded her hands and waited still as a figurehead. Rain tapped the window with soft fingers. "Decide," Harold said. Sloan pushed her chair back with a sound that made Nina flinch. "I need a minute," she said. She stood. "Come on," she told Evan. He hesitated long enough to look at me and then followed her into the hall. The door shut. The room breathed once. June took my hand under the table and held it palm to palm. The skin at the base of her thumb was paper thin and warm. I could hear the clock in Harold's bookcase. It ticked like a small hammer. They came back in 10 minutes. Sloan's eyes were dry and bright. Evan's were red and damp. He dragged the back of his hand across his face like a child. "We will sign," Sloan said, "on one condition: she never speaks to us again." "That is not a condition of this agreement," Harold said. That is a wish. Fine, Sloane said. Fine, give me the pen. She signed with a hand that did not tremble. Her name slanted the way a wave slants when it meets a break wall. Evan took the pen and paused. He looked at his name already printed under the line. He looked at mine on the facing page. He set the pen down and picked it up again. He signed slowly, letter by letter, as if drawing his name for the first time. Mr. Chen stamped the documents with a sound that felt final. One packet went into Nina's folder, one into Harold's, one into June's bag. I held my copy and tried to feel the weight of it. 7 days, Harold said. If you need the sheriff to enforce, call me. Sloane stood with her bag on her shoulder. She glanced around the office as if trying to find a thing she could take. Her eyes landed on me again. There was nothing soft in them. You think you won something, she said. Enjoy your old curtains. She walked out with her head high and her heels straight. Evan stayed. He did not sit. He put his hands on the back of the chair and leaned as if the wood could hold him up. His mouth tried to make a shape and failed twice. I lost my mother today, he said. No, I said. You lost me when you signed my name without my hand. He nodded as if that was a sentence he would have to carry for a while. He picked up his bag. He touched 2 fingers to the table and then let them fall. He left without looking back. Nina handed me a card with a number written in ink. Call me if you receive any notices, she said. Bring them to me in person. Make no calls on your own. Thank you, I said. The elevator was slow and loud. The grilled gate clanged once before it slid. In the lobby, a man struggled with a stack of boxes and June held the door with her hip while I stepped into the rain. The street smell had shifted to wet paper and hot tar. June walked me to the truck and did not start it until my hands were steady on my lap. We did not talk on the way home. The wipers kept their beat. A heron stood in a ditch on the edge of Ardsley Park and watched cars pass as if this was the only entertainment he had. At the house, the porch steps were slick. I set my palm flat on the newel post and climbed. The bulb in the porch light had a halo of moisture inside the glass. I reached up and turned it until it seated true. The socket whispered. When I flicked the switch, nothing happened. I flicked it again. Still nothing. Inside the house smelled like rain and something metallic. I set the signed packet in the drawer where Tom kept anything that mattered. Then I moved to the hook by the door and looked at the key rings. There were 2 hooks. One was empty. One held my daily set. The empty one seemed larger now. The absence had a shape I could see. I made tea and stood at the sink while the kettle sang. Across the street, Mrs. Lang stood in her window and pretended to check her blinds. The cup warmed my palms. I watched water trickle down the storm door in crooked lines and listened to the quiet. The quiet did not feel like peace. It felt like a room you have not been in for a long time. A car pulled into the drive and idled. Headlights washed the ceiling of the front room in a pale sweep. I set the cup down and went to the door. The engine cut. Footsteps came up the walk. There was a knock that sounded careful rather than polite. I put my hand on the knob and waited one breath before I turned it. Evan stood on the porch with rain in his hair, a hood half pulled, and a ring of keys in his hand. The light above us held a pale fog behind his glass like a breath he could not release. He did not try to step past the threshold. He held the keys with both palms the way you hold a bird that might still fly. I found these in the glove compartment, he said. They should have been on the hook. He placed the ring on the little table by the door. It hit the wood with a soft click. One key was missing. The old brass garage key. He stared at the empty spot on the ring as if it might confess. I will look for the other, he said. No, I said, I will change the lock. Water darkened his jacket in a slow spread. He nodded. Some part of him went out behind his eyes and the rest stayed. He took a step back from the door. The porch boards drank the rain around his shoes. I will not come in unless you ask me, he said. I closed the door. The house took the sound and made it smaller. The next morning brought the first box. Sloane dragged it down the hall and left a crease in the runner. Tape rasped, flaps slapped, drawers opened and shut. They moved in slick lines, careful not to look at me when they crossed the kitchen for tape or scissors. Evan folded shirts at the dining table. Sloane filled bags with lotions and candles from the master. She kept her sunglasses perched on her head inside the house. She wore them outside when she walked past Mrs. Lang. I cooked for myself in a quiet that felt like wool. I ate standing at the sink. The drips from the storm door lined up with the slow leak at the faucet until it felt like the house was counting. A mover came on Thursday with forearms like ropes and a soft voice. He carried a television out and left a rectangle of dust where it had been. He took a chair that had never learned the room and bumped the doorframe on the way. Sloane corrected him with one finger. She did not apologize for the mark she had made the first week she arrived. I wiped it with a cloth when they left the room. Upstairs, their closet emptied by inches. Hangers clicked, scraping the bar, a little chatter of teeth. I sat on the bed that had been ours and watched the rain bead on the window. Somewhere on Tybee, the water would be silver instead of brown. I ran my hand along the quilt and found the small snag Tom used to slide his finger into as a joke. On Friday, I climbed the stairs to check the outlets. Their room smelled like perfume and cardboard. On the bed, a frame lay face down with the back loose. I lifted it. The glass was cracked from one corner to the center. Under it was Evan at 6 years old, in a striped shirt, knees pink from the beach up on Tom's shoulders, with his arms spread like he was finding a balance he could trust. My breath went shallow. I touched the line of the crack and then slid the photo gently into the top drawer of my dresser. They were gone by Saturday afternoon. The driveway took a deep breath when the truck turned the corner. The rooms leaned inward, then expanded. The echo in the hallway returned. The navy velvet drapes waited in the hall closet. I pulled the pale linen down and folded it neat. Dust floated in the rectangle of the window and took its time falling. The navy went up the way it had the first day we hung it. The metal hooks knew where to sit. When I drew the fabric together, the room exhaled. I took a bowl of warm water and a cloth to the pantry. Flour and cinnamon and old wood rose around me again. My thumb traced T+M91 and found the notch I had missed. I wiped the hardware until it remembered its shine. I lined the shelves with paper. I put the sugar where it had always gone and loosened my shoulders when it did not fight me. June came by with a bag of cones from the ice cream shop on Habersham, and we sat on the porch with our knees close. The porch light stayed off. We did not talk much. Thunder, with no storm, rolled along the river and made the air hum. When she left, she squeezed my forearm with her fingers and looked at the ceiling fixture as if she wanted to fix it with her mind. On Sunday, I put the navy back in the living room and took the family frames from the declutter box one by one. Evan at 5 with a gap tooth, Evan at 10 with a cast on his wrist, Tom laughing with his eyes closed. I set Tom's watch back on the nightstand and did not wind it. I left the porch light switch alone at dusk. The sky went lavender and then dark. The quilting circle returned on Wednesday. 4 women came with tote bags and questions. The machine purred. Fabric whispered under the foot. Steam rose from mugs of sweet tea and curled into the kitchen light. Lucy, the youngest, brought a baby that slept in a basket by the wall. The baby sighed and hiccuped. We pinned a block and unpinned it and pinned it again until the corners matched. My hands remembered the small ways of cloth. I made an appointment with a counselor June liked. The office had a rug that muted the world outside. Dr. Martin asked for my story and then asked for my breath. I counted to 4 on the inhale and 6 on the exhale until my voice settles on this side of breaking. We sat with long pauses like water between dock posts. We did not fix anything. We placed things where they could be lifted later. I drove with June to Tybee on a bright day that tasted like salt. The wind pressed my skirt to my legs and turned my hair to rope. We ate hush puppies hot from oil and let the crumbs fall where they wanted. We watched a kid teaching a dog to fetch a stick in the surf and cheered when the dog learned. The horizon held steady. The line stayed a line. The first deposit came on the 1st of the month. My phone buzzed at the kitchen table. $500 from Evan. Memo read, keeping my word. I touched the screen as if it had heat. I took a pen and wrote the date on a postcard I keep in the junk drawer. I slid the postcard under the rubber band that holds restaurant menus and batteries that may or may not work. 2 weeks later, June told me Evan had left his old job. Someone at the bank had asked a question he could not answer with a clean mouth. A friend at the dealership said he was at a garage off Victory changing oil and brakes until midnight. I pictured his fingers black to the knuckles. He always bit his nails when he was small. I hoped he would stop. I saw Sloane once on River Street. She was with a man who wore a sport coat in the heat and smiled like a camera was nearby. She hooked her hand into his arm and leaned as if she had always leaned there. She did not see me or pretended not to. Her mouth made a shape for a laugh and then a shape for a drink. The second deposit came like the first. The porch light stayed off except when I needed to see the steps. A bird came to the hydrangea and took a little piece for her nest and came back the next day for more. I watered in the morning and watched the ground darken around the roots. One afternoon, I was setting the table for myself, a plate and a fork and a linen napkin in a color Tom called oyster, when a car door shut in the drive. I looked through the screen. Evan stood on the porch and waited. He did not knock. He held a small paper envelope in his hand. I opened the door. He held out the envelope. "The missing key," he said. "We found it in a pocket of Sloane's camera bag. It is the garage." He looked at my face to see if I believed him, then dropped his eyes and held the envelope straighter. I took it and set it on the table. He did not take a step in. Rain had dried to a damp pattern on his shirt collar. He smelled like motor oil and soap. "Thank you," I said. He nodded. His eyes moved to the pantry door and then away. He swallowed. "I replaced the bulbs in the porch light," he said. "I noticed the old one was done. I did not touch the switch." "All right," I said. He put his hands in his pockets. The movement looked like a habit he had learned this month. He took them out again. "I am depositing on time," Hugo said. "I will not miss." "I saw it," I said. He looked past me into the kitchen at the machine on the table and the stack of blocks we had nested like geese. He started to speak and stopped. He rubbed the heel of one hand along the porch rail and left a clean stripe in the pollen. "I will go," he said. "I just wanted to bring the key." He turned and took the steps slow. At the bottom, he paused and put his palm on the rail again. He looked back toward me and then at the light fixture above my head. His mouth made a curve I did not know. "Good night, Mom," he said. "Good night," I said. When the door closed, I opened the envelope and slid the garage key onto the spare ring. The weight felt right again. I hung it on the hook and stood there long enough to hear the metal settle. In August, heat pressed the day flat. The quilting circle broke for a week and the house felt large again. I took my sewing to the porch and patched a tear in a shirt Evan left in the laundry months back. The thread caught the light and then lost it as it slid through. A golf cart buzzed past with 3 boys in the back and a dog in the front. The dog looked like he was driving. The third deposit landed on the first like the others. I did not touch the money. I wrote the new date on the postcard and put it back in the drawer. The ink bled a little because my hand shook and the pen pressed too hard. That evening the phone rang. The number was not saved. I let it buzz once more before I answered. "Mom," Evan said. His voice was careful and hoarse. "It has been 3 months." "I know," I said. "Can we have coffee?" he asked. No asks, just coffee. We met at the cafe across from Forsyth, the one with the chip saucers and the good cinnamon. The fountain threw white water into the air and let it fall back in a rhythm that could fool your heart into slowing down. I sat by the window 10 minutes early and watched people walk dogs that looked like their owners. Evan came on the hour from the bus, a work shirt clean but stained at the cuffs, hair shorter than before. He saw me and lifted his hand without waving it. He stood at the table but did not pull out the chair until I nodded. The bell over the door chimed behind him. Coffee steamed in the space between us. His hands were rough and nicked. When he wrapped them around the cup, the heat seemed to help. "Thank you for coming, so," he said. "Thank you for calling," I said. We sat with silence until it felt like it could hold words. He looked at the fountain and then at his cup and then at me. "I am at the garage off Victory Pick," he said. "I do brakes and oil and whatever they hand me. I am not fast. I am careful. They say I am improving." "Are you eating?" I asked. "Enough," he said. He smiled a small smile as if he knew what I was really asking. He told me he was seeing a counselor one morning a week before the shop opened. He said sometimes he talked too much and sometimes he could not talk at all. He said the man made him count his breath until the room stopped moving. He said he paid in cash because the office felt easier when paper leaves no trail. I listened. The coffee was bitter and good. "I deposit on the first," he said. "I will keep doing that." "I see it," I said. He swallowed. "I'm not asking for anything." "I know," I said. He lifted his eyes and held them steady on mine. He did not blink for a long moment. He seemed to be putting a shape to something he had not managed to name. "I signed your name," he said. He said it plain. He did not dress it up. I thought I could carry it and never say it out loud. I cannot. I set my cup down. The saucer clicked. Outside, a child tugged at the leash of a dog that wanted to go the other way. "You have said it?" I said. He nodded. The nod looked like a man learning to carry a heavier thing without making a sound. We walked in the park after that. The shade under the oaks felt cooler than it should. A tourist couple argued in whispers over a map and then laughed at themselves. Evan put his hands in his pockets, took them out, and let them hang. "Could we try again?" he asked. "Not what we were. Something new." "Slowly," I said. "Slowly," he said back. We stood by the fountain and watched the water do the same thing it had done all morning. He looked at the spray on the surface and then at me. His mouth opened and then closed. He did not force a word that had not arrived yet. I was grateful for that. We parted at the bus stop. He lifted his hand again in that small way. The bus took him. I went home and walked through my rooms with the quiet on. He called on Sundays, short calls that made space for the next Sunday. He told me small things. The name of the man at the garage who knew every sound a belt can make and what it means. The way the heat baked under the hoods like an oven with no door. The first time a customer thanked him to his face. I told him about Lucy's baby starting to roll over and about the hydrangeas deciding to bloom hard despite the heat. In December, on a day air could break, I invited him to dinner. I did not invite him to stay. He arrived with white daisies wrapped in paper and a look that knew he was crossing a line laid carefully. He knocked and then stepped back onto the mat to wait. The porch light was off, and that felt right. "Come in, I said. He stood in the entry and took in the velvet drapes back where they belonged, the frames on the mantel, where they were meant to be, the pantry door closed and shining and whole. He did not talk about any of it. He smelled the chicken and dumplings and nodded at the stove like it was an old friend. We ate at the table we have always used. He tasted and closed his eyes once at the spoon. He wiped the rim of his bowl with the piece of biscuit he had saved. He told me he liked his job. He said he sleeps. He said the apartment is small, but it is clean. We did not say Sloan. The absence had its own chair, and it did not need a place setting. After dinner, he reached into his bag and took out a plain envelope. "This month, I wanted to bring it in person," "Cruel," he said, "to look you in the eye when I do." He pushed the envelope toward me and waited while I opened it. $520 bills, a folded paper under the bills. His handwriting had not changed since high school, letters tall and careful. I read while he watched the doorway to the pantry. He did not try to see over my hand. The words were simple. He would keep paying. He would pay more when he could. He would do it because it was the only weight he could choose to lift that might change the shape of the other weights. "I do not need you to pay more than we agreed," I said. "I need to try," he said. "Eat the last dumpling," I said. He did. He washed the bowls after because Tom always did. He moved in my kitchen without opening the wrong drawer. When he finished, he stood by the pantry with his hands clean and dry. He looked at the inside of the door where Tom had nicked the frame and smiled the way a man smiles at a thing that is not his, but still lets him stand beside it. "Will you help me with something?" I asked. "Yes," he said. I took a small brass plate from my pocket. I had ordered it and put it in a dish near the phone until the moment felt right. The letters were stamped shallow and true. Tom's hands, 1991. I held the screws in my palm while Evan set the plate where the wood wanted it. He turned the driver with care, not stripping anything, not rushing the last quarter turn. When he finished, we stepped back together and looked at the small shine. "I will not touch this pantry, he said. "You just did," I said. He shook his head. "You know what I mean." He carried the trash out and came back to the porch. The air had a bite in it. He rubbed his hands together and blew into them. I opened the drawer by the door and took out a single key on a plain ring. It was cut last week. It did not match the old ring that hung with its full weight in its old story. "This is for dinner," I said. "Not for living here. It opens the front door. It opens nothing else." He looked at the key for a long beat. He did not touch it until I tipped it into his palm. He closed his hand and held it like he might hold a small bird. He did not put it in his pocket. He kept it in his hand as if it were warmer that way. "I understand," he said. When he left, he went down the steps with the care of a man who knows Woodhold's memory. At the walk, he turned and looked up at the fixture above my head. He did not ask me to turn it on. He put his hand up in that same half wave and smiled a little and walked to the street. He came back the next Sunday, and the next. He brought flowers that were not expensive. He brought a book he had finished and thought I might like. He replaced a board on the porch rail that had been loose since the storms in the spring. He did not tell me that he had. He left the fresh sawdust in a neat pile and brushed it into his palm before I could see it. I saw it anyway. I taught a new pattern to the quilting circle, and Lucy's baby learned to sit up and then to pull herself along the rug. June found a deal on airfare to somewhere and told me over cones on the porch, our knees almost touching and our cheeks cold under the porch roof. The house held the winter and then let it go. Hydrangea stems went gray and then woke into green. On a Sunday evening when the street smelled like someone was grilling 2 doors down, Evan fixed the last loose screw on the handrail and wiped his hands on a rag that used to live in Tom's toolbox. He looked at the sky. The light did the soft thing it does before it commits to dark. He waited while I stood inside the door with my hand on the switch. The fixture above us had a new bulb that sat clean in its socket. I turned the porch light on. The glass warmed and then glowed. It lit the boards and the steps and the space where the swing gently tapped the rail. Evan looked up into it like he might be able to see the filament. He smiled at it, then at me. It was not the smile he used when he was trying to sell a thing to anyone. It was the one he used when he was 10 and put a frog back where he found it. He hugged me at the top of the steps. It was not a hard hug or a soft one. It was the right size. He stepped back and put his hand on the rail he had tightened and patted it once with 2 fingers. "Good night, Ise. Abdika. Good night," he said. "Good night," I said. I stood in the door and watched him walk down the path. He did not look back. He did not need to. When he reached the street, I turned the light off. The porch dimmed. I stood another breath and then reached up and turned it on again. The glass warmed my face. The old boards under my feet felt sure. The house held its shape. The pantry door clicked shut the way it has always clicked. The key on the new ring settled against my palm and stayed there. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.